Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are based. And welcome to the webinar on what next for intellectual property. In this webinar, we are joined by Professor William Murphy and Professor John Orcutt, as well as Sarah Dorner, who is the Director of Admissions at University of New Hampshire. Together, they will be presenting on the future of intellectual property laws and the IP law programs at one of the most sought after law schools for the IP program, which will help lawyers as well as practicing lawyers as well as law students who plan to do an LLM to equip them for a career in intellectual property laws. So if you are joining in live right now, please type in any questions that you have, and our moderators will present it to the panelists and they can take it from there. I am now handing over the presentation to Sarah. I welcome you all to the webinar and hope you have a very fruitful webinar session.
Hi, good morning, and thank you for joining us. As Vishnu said, my name is Sarah Dorner, and I am the Associate Director of Admissions and International Outreach at the University of New Hampshire School of Law, formerly the Franklin Pierce Law Center. And I'm joined today with Professor Bill Murphy, who is the chair of our Commerce and Technology graduate programs. Professor Murphy was one of the founding partners in a law firm here in Concord, New Hampshire, specializing in technology-based business law and intellectual property. He's also a founding and ongoing member of the team that designed and developed the Portal for Intellectual Property Rights, which is a web resource developed specifically for entrepreneurs, innovators, investors, and financial institutions to help make the commercialization of intellectual property easier and more efficient. He's also a former antitrust trial lawyer for the Federal Trade Commission in Washington, D.C. And also with me today is Professor John Orcutt, who was selected as the law school's Teacher of the Year 6 times. Professor Orcutt's research interests focus on innovation systems and how to improve the environment for entrepreneurial companies and technology-based economic growth. Professor Orcutt does extensive work in the areas of patent valuation, technology commercialization, and startup companies, and travels the world to provide hands-on training. He's also a former Silicon Valley investment banker. And so we have a video that Professor Murphy and Professor Orcutt have developed for this presentation about what's next in IP. So we'll switch to that video now.
You might need to click on the PowerPoint presentation. No, it's already sharing. It's already sharing. Click on the PowerPoint presentation.
We'll just get our PowerPoint up and see if we can get this going.
Hi, I'm Bill.
And I'm John, and we're going to talk about what's next in IP.
Before talking about IP's role in the modern economy, let's go back in time to set the stage.
Are we going to talk about dinosaurs?
Maybe not that far back. Throughout history, the law has always been important to economic success.
When you combine good laws with skilled lawyers, good things happen.
Different laws take on greater importance during different economic phases. Let's start with an agricultural economy.
Real property rights, contract law, and inheritance law are particularly important for agricultural economies. With industrial economies, different laws take on greater importance. Sale of goods contracts, corporate law, competition law, and employment law are the key.
Legal innovations were critical to success in each phase and helped pave the way for transitions from one phase to the next.
Can you give me a specific example where legal innovations helped improve an economy?
Of course. How about the United States' introduction of modern corporation law during the 1800s? Corporations were instrumental to the United States Industrial Revolution.
Didn't corporations help fund the United States Railroad build-out during the 1800s?
Exactly. Building the railroad system was very expensive. No single person could pay for it alone. Corporations created a means for the general public to invest and pay for it.
Are we ready to talk about IP now?
Yes, good IP laws coupled with skilled IP lawyers leads to more creativity, more ingenuity, more innovation, and more success.
I know about IP law. That's the law for the information age.
Studying IP law helps lawyers identify what qualifies as intellectual property and how to protect it.
That sounds important, but is assigning property rights to ideas all that is needed to promote creativity, ingenuity, and innovation?
No, that's not nearly enough. That is why information age leaders must be prepared for what's next. They need to understand how the law helps them use their information age assets.
UNH Law has always been the IP law school of what's next. Here are just a few topics for what's next in IP. IP valuation, IP finance, collaborative IP strategies, privacy and data security, e-commerce, and blockchain technology.
IP valuation is a good example.
And we wrote a book on that.
You cannot make an informed IP decision without valuation.
Big data and quantitative analysis are fundamentally changing the way businesses make decisions.
IP lawyers must learn to operate in this world. Modeling, decision trees, probability analysis should all be part of a modern IP lawyer's toolkit.
And learning valuation is fun.
Houston, contact with a test. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. End the test.
Houston, contact Hawaii, contact 100% keen and modulation is go.
Roger, Hawaii, reading you loud and clear also.
We'll continue the conversation with Professor Murphy and Professor Orcutt, and we'll make sure that everyone has access to the video following the presentation so that you can watch the video again. I understand there were some issues with the sound, so my apologies. So I'll start. We kind of have some interview questions here for Professor Orcutt and Professor Murphy. So the first question is, the presentation mentioned IP finance. Can you take a minute to explain what you mean by IP finance?
IP finance deals, it's where we start to treat intellectual property assets as more than just something to protect, but also something to use. The idea here is we create intellectual property for a particular reason. We create it in order to grow our businesses, improve our economies, raise the standard of living for entire countries. And IP finance is really all about how do we pay for it? How do we use it creatively for companies and countries?
Okay, thank you. So my next question, what trends are you seeing in how companies are building their IP portfolios?
One of the things that we noticed, and I think that the economy is starting to understand, that the inventive and creative process has now become much more collaborative and cumulative. And therefore, we see a lot more cooperation amongst entities. Now, whenever you have competitors cooperating, we have some competition law concerns, and so we have to be much more aware of that. We also have different economics. And when you think about it, a patent doesn't wear out if somebody else is using it. If I'm using a vehicle, you can't use the vehicle. So we'll call that as scarce. It's rivalrous. I can either use it or you can use it, and we only have one of those. We both can use and practice the patent. We both can watch the copyrighted movie. So we're seeing an evolution of collaboration and strategies to collaborate around these non-scarce and non-rivalrous goods.
Yeah, two other trends that I think are particularly important, and I think also help guide students when they're thinking about how they want to prepare themselves to be IP lawyers. One of them is that mergers and acquisitions, so buying and selling companies, has become increasingly important for companies when they are obtaining their intellectual property. You don't just create your own intellectual property. Oftentimes, you will go out and buy other companies for the particular purpose of acquiring their assets. That shapes how you might build your own company. You may build your company recognizing some bigger company is going to buy you in the future. And then if you're at a bigger company, you need to know how to acquire smaller companies. And IP lawyers are central to that whole process. And it shapes what kind of classes you may want to take as a law student. If you want to be an IP lawyer and you only take IP courses and you don't take things like antitrust courses so you learn how to deal with the collaborative process, or mergers and acquisition courses so you understand how to buy and sell companies, you won't be as prepared as you could be as a lawyer. And then one other trend that we're seeing that's really important is, at least in the United States, it's the flight to quality. Obtaining significant IP portfolios is getting more expensive, in particular on the patent side, and that's causing companies to be more selective in how they approach their portfolios. And this is one of the reasons why we teach IP valuation at UNH Law. To the extent you as a lawyer can guide your client better on a valuation standpoint, does it make sense? Is it cost effective for me to go out and build this portfolio or acquire this portfolio? That becomes much more important.
Okay, thank you.
And I think this is part of the motivation why we wrote a book on patent valuation, and it's already been translated into Chinese. I think that this is a worldwide problem. Everybody's discovering that this is an expensive process to not only acquire, but to defend and to deal with patent portfolios after the fact if you have patents that are valuable and patents that aren't valuable in that portfolio.
Thank you. My next question is, what exactly is IP valuation, and is that really an area where lawyers can be involved?
IP valuation is really nothing more than putting numbers on your intellectual property assets. You don't just view them as, for example, you might have written a beautiful patent. It's really well written, and another lawyer looks at it and they go, wow, that's a really well crafted patent that you've put there. It's the idea of sort of taking that sort of thought process and then going, okay, now what is it worth, right? What is the actual dollar amount? And it doesn't always have to be done in money terms, but it's putting numbers on it so we can start comparing one type of IP asset to another. And by doing that, that allows you to make choices. So you can say, this patent, for example, is better than that other patent. So if I only have enough resources to pursue one or the other, I'm able to make a much better choice. And to the idea that lawyers being able to do this, I have traveled the world for the last 5 or 6 years teaching lawyers how to do IP valuation. It's a big topic, but it's a topic that more and more lawyers are embracing. I go frequently to China to teach lawyers there how to do IP valuation. In my experience, lawyers have absolutely no problem learning this. You know, sometimes it takes a little bit of time to get started because it's just new. Thinking in terms of numbers is new for many lawyers. But once you get over that little hump, things go well. And honestly, most importantly, when you've got countries like China that are taking it very, very seriously, you don't have a choice. You have to get good at this or you won't be competitive.
And one of the things I might add is that, and we explore this in our book in great detail, is lawyers sometimes aren't good at dealing with uncertainty. Sometimes we want the right answer, the answer. And I think that that's part of what we have to teach lawyers to be more comfortable with. We have to teach the courts to be more comfortable with this idea of risk, which is essentially uncertainty times the outcome. That tells you the risk. And you can look to the future. You don't have a crystal ball. I don't know exactly what the future is. I don't know if somebody's going to invent something that's going to make my current patent not valuable in the future, but we can model that uncertainty better than not doing it. And that's one of the things that I think that we've introduced. And when companies they want to know a risk assessment, which essentially involves that dealing with uncertainty.
Thank you. And one last question here is, when you talk about IP, you kind of sound like business people. Do you really expect IP lawyers to talk and think like business people?
Yeah, that's the future. And again, there's a reason why we think of our law school as the law school for what's next. Our goal is not just to teach you sort of current, the cutting edge of what people are doing today. We also want to prepare you for what's coming next. And the idea of lawyers being able to function better with their business clients is something that just is growing and growing in importance. Business people are our clients. If we can't speak with them, if we can't talk their language, think like them, we can't be as effective of counselors as we should be.
Yeah, I think both John and I have had experience in the business world. I think we've always been a little bit surprised that lawyers tend to shy away from trying to understand the business aspects. When I was an antitrust attorney, I did not have business training, and I was convinced by one of our witnesses to go to business school. So I went to our business school and actually ended up with a doctorate, and I've taught business students. And the same, they need to understand law, but we have to help train them as lawyers to understand what the legal ramifications. At the same time, as lawyers, we need to understand, well, what are the business motivations? One of the things, back to this uncertainty, is they're much more comfortable with evaluating risk. That's what businesses do. And sometimes the lawyers are uncomfortable being part of that process. The whole idea is for us to train lawyers that are comfortable being participants in that process.
Just want to, before we go to the last part of the presentation, I just want to check and see if there are any other questions here. I'm just going to take a look at our chat window and see if I'm missing anything. Vishnu, are there any questions that have come in to you?
Yes, there are two questions. So one is
Great.
asked by Nitin Bajaj. So his question was specifically on what is blockchain technology with regard to intellectual property. And there is another question from Janvi Kapadia, who had asked a question. But I think her question, you would probably be addressing it at the later part of your presentation.
Okay, so can you repeat that first question?
With regard to blockchain technology, how effective is an intellectual property or knowledge about intellectual property? The question specifically is what is blockchain technology with regard to IP, but I think what he means, what Nitin means is on what is the application of IP to blockchain technology. Nitin, if you're listening in, is that what you mean? If not, you can type in your specific question. So this was
I think I have a feeling as to what he's probably asking. So on the one hand, especially if you're looking at intellectual property as fundamentally as patents as being sort of the center of intellectual property. Blockchain technology, a lot of what's going on there is probably non-patentable subject matter. So the starting point may be, well, is that really an area of intellectual property? Part of sort of when I'm talking about intellectual property, I'm sometimes a little sloppy, and I describe things maybe a bit broader than somebody who's a purist on intellectual property deals with, patents, trademarks, copyrights, trade secrets. Sometimes I will use the term to describe anything that's dealing with information assets, and it's the whole idea that the key assets for the information age are various information assets, and blockchain deals with information very importantly. Now, one of the things that I think that is a very direct relationship between intellectual property and blockchain anytime there are innovations in information assets, so new blockchain it's a new market, a new industry. Lawyers need to go and serve that industry. The types of lawyers that tend to make that transformation are oftentimes going to be the lawyers who are very comfortable dealing with information assets, which are going to be your intellectual property lawyers. So intellectual property lawyers, at least in the US, if you go and look at who has become the blockchain lawyers in the US, you're going to see a substantial percentage of them are intellectual property lawyers who take that step over. It's sort of like it's a natural add-on to the types of work that you would do as an IP lawyer.
And I might add that we have a blockchain legal certificate already in the works. I think it's being introduced this summer from one of our other faculty members, talking about all the legal aspects that the blockchain technologies bring to bear. I think that I'd also like to emphasize something John said. Whenever I talk to the business students or business clients, they like to talk about intangible assets. We like to talk in the law about intellectual property, things you can own. And some of the intangible assets you can't own in the beginning, but eventually you can. I remember when I was in law school taking patents, there was, you couldn't get a business patent, a business method. And then we decided you could do that. And then there's a question of, should we retreat back from that? The law is dynamic. There's going to be ownership possibilities if this is making money and people are going to try to control it. So that's part of the learning process. It's not already formed. This is there's going to be foundations for particularly some of the financial technology, the fintech business, and people will be looking to protect their business models. So who knows where that's going to go, but that's part of what's next, trying to look at the future and are we going to try to protect or is there inventive process in that activity.
Great. And I'll, at the end of the presentation, I'll share my contact information and certainly invite anyone who's interested in learning more about the blockchain certificate to reach out to me. I'd be happy to get you more information on that. Any other questions, Vishnu, before we wrap up with the last bit of our PowerPoint presentation?
There are questions, but I think these questions are something that you will be answering. So there is one question specifically directed towards an LLM related question. So I think you probably will be answering that very shortly during your presentation. And there is one question by Anisha specifically relating to the intellectual property, like what are the key qualities for an IP lawyer? So that is the question that Anisha Ray had asked.
Okay. Do you want to take that question now and then we'll go to the PowerPoint?
Well, intellectual property lawyers are a very broad group. Some of them are just litigators, people defending the patents, and sometimes or the copyrights or the trademarks. And sometimes it's best that they don't understand the technology. They don't understand it because the judge or the jury might not. And so the technical lawyers will explain it to them, and then they have to explain it to another group. And if they cannot understand it by somebody explaining to them as a person not skilled in that particular art set, then that's a skill they can do. You can be a copyright lawyer. We have a number of people here that are not technically trained, but they're copyright lawyers, trademark lawyers. They don't have a technology involved. Patent lawyers do need a technology. If you want to take the patent bar and practice before the United States Patent and Trademark Office in the patent area, you do have to have scientific qualifications, but even those are separate. If I have a biological set of skills, I might not be the best attorney to do a laser patent. So there's so many possibilities. I think that there's nothing that you have to have, but you want to look at whatever the career path you want and find out, okay, what is being demanded. But there's almost infinite number of possibilities that, every business, their main asset is going to be intellectual property. Even the business people have to understand something about that. The general counsel might not be a patent lawyer, but they've got a portfolio of patents, portfolio of trademarks. Banks now have to understand if I'm going to loan money against the intellectual property, the trademark, or the patent, I have to know something about it. I've got to be able to read the claims even though I might not be getting the patent or prosecuting or defending the trademarks.
Excellent. So we'll switch now to a little bit, just a little more information on UNH Law and our graduate law program. So the University of New Hampshire School of Law is a top 100 law school. As we mentioned, we consistently rank in the top 10 for IP programs, and this year we were ranked number 5, so we're very proud of that. We were also this year, LLM Guide listed us as a top 10 LLM program for intellectual property. Our Franklin Pierce Center for Intellectual Property has one of the most comprehensive lists of innovative IP courses at any law school in the U.S. And we also have the largest full-time faculty in the field of IP, and our faculty are renowned for their practice experience. In addition to the largest full-time faculty, we also have the largest IP library in the Western Hemisphere. New Hampshire is a lovely state on the east coast of the U.S. It's a safe and welcoming community and the number 3 safest state in the country. And our location here in Concord, New Hampshire is, the campus itself is walking distance to the downtown city center. We're about 1 hour from Boston and 5 hours by bus or car to New York City or Montreal. So a little bit about where we are. And then in terms of the degrees that we offer, so we have an LLM degree, and the requirement for this program is that students have a first degree in law, so either a JD or an LLB. And the program takes about 1 year to complete at a full-time pace. We also offer master's degrees, and those are designed for students who don't necessarily have law experience already, but do have a bachelor's degree. And that program as well is about 1 year. And then lastly, we also offer graduate certificates. Again, a bachelor's degree is required. It doesn't need to be from a legal background. And that program is typically just 1 semester, so students can come for about 4 months and earn that certificate. And then the areas that we focus in, as we mentioned, we have our intellectual property program. And so here we offer all 3 degrees that I just mentioned, the LLM, the master's, and the graduate certificate. They are offered either here on campus, a residential format. We offer them online, and then also a limited residential offering where students can begin here on campus in New Hampshire and then complete the degree online. Some of the courses that you might take in that program are American Legal Process and Analysis, Patent Practice and Procedure, Intellectual Property, and International Trade. So certainly not a comprehensive list, but just a small sample. The next focus area we have is Commerce and Technology. And this program for both the LLM, the master's and graduate certificate is offered in a residential format only, so for students who want to come here to New Hampshire to study with us. And some courses that you might take here are Patent Strategies for Business, Mining Patent Information in the Digital Age, and Technology Licensing. And then lastly, worth mentioning is we also offer programs in International Criminal Law and Justice. These programs are online only. Again, we offer the LLM, the master's, and the graduate certificate all online. And some sample courses are Comparative Criminal Justice Systems, Human Trafficking, and International Criminal Court and Special Tribunals. In terms of applying to the program, so students who are applying to our residential programs can apply through the Law School Admissions Council online, LSAC. For students who are applying online, we do have an online application on our website. And for all of the programs, there's the application, 2 letters of recommendation, your resume or CV, a personal statement or an essay kind of talking about why you're pursuing this program. We ask that official transcripts be mailed directly from a credential authentication service such as LSAC, Globe, or WES. And then we do, for folks from abroad, we look for either TOEFL or IELTS, and the scores there are for TOEFL an 80 or higher, or IELTS is 6.5 or higher. We offer rolling admissions, so we accept applications year-round. Though that said, we do have some deadlines for the semester start. So for fall, the application deadline is June 1st, and for spring, the application deadline is November 1st. So there is still time for students who are looking to begin their studies this fall 2019. There is still time to submit your application for one of our programs. And then in regards to kind of the costs involved, so we do our very best to keep our programs affordable and accessible. Our tuition for the LLM and the master's programs is about $38,000 for the whole program. We do offer substantial scholarships for our residential programs. Up to 50% are available for students. And this is based off of your academic record, your professional experience, the quality of your application. And the online programs are charged per credit hour, so they're $1,250 per credit hour. And then in regards to the cost of living, I think this is another big thing for folks to think about when they're looking to study in the U.S. So New Hampshire is a relatively affordable place to live. Students are able to rent apartments for about $800 to $900 a month. And we advise students to budget about $20,000, $21,000 for the cost of living for the year here in New Hampshire. And then I think, a couple of other things worth highlighting, and I think we referenced earlier, is our powerful global network. Our UNH Law Franklin Pierce alumni are working in over 80 countries around the world. They're at major corporations, top law firms, and national IP offices. And so I won't read through all of this, but this just kind of gives you a sample of where our alumni are and the type of work they're doing. So you can see that we have alumni working, of course, here in the U.S., but Argentina, Nigeria, Mexico, India, South Korea, Croatia. The list really does go on. And so here is the contact information. So for anyone who would like to learn a little bit more about our programs and the application process, please, I encourage you to reach out to the email here on the website. We'd be on the PowerPoint. We'd be happy to answer your questions and help you navigate the application process. So I'll just check and see before we thank you all and sign off if there are any other questions that we can help to answer.
Sarah, there were a couple of questions I'd sent it across to you. So one of the questions that's been asked, and I think that is something that's there in everyone's mind, is that how can an LLM from US be beneficial for someone who is not from the US? And if they go back to their respective country, how can they utilize that? So that is a question that has been asked by Janvi, and I think that could be there in the minds of so many other people as well.
Great, yeah. Professor Orcutt?
Yeah, a couple of ways. And I worked abroad for a number of years, and I found that non-U.S. attorneys will oftentimes their careers will progress much faster and in better pathways if they have significant U.S. legal training. So just having on your resume the fact that you've studied in the United States and earned a degree from the United States will, in many cases, if not most cases, turbocharge your career. It will give you a significant competitive advantage when you're building your career. Ideally, if you are doing really well and you feel very comfortable while you're studying here, you take the New York bar on top of everything, in which case not only are you then trained in the United States, you are a U.S. lawyer, even if you're not practicing in the United States. So if your goal is to return to your home country and work there, being able to having on your business card that you are a U.S. lawyer is worth a lot. It is a huge boost in your ability to get jobs and to get better jobs.
And I might add, before I became a law professor, as Sarah noted, I had an IP boutique firm, and it had two of the partners were from this law school, and we found that whenever we were doing business for our U.S. clients abroad, we would look at and see who had an LLM from the law school. We knew we could trust them. We had contacts. Sometimes they knew the person. If they didn't know them, they were, you could have a contact point. So it became a point of communication and an element of trust that you knew, okay, we knew they were trained, they spoke the same legalese that we were speaking, they got trained the same way, and a lot of the business came out of that. You also have to remember in commerce and technology, a lot of the major players are U.S. companies. You saw the person that was listed on Sarah's PowerPoint from India works for Disney. That's a type of thing that would be helpful. The economy and the legal system of the United States as well as the Indian one. I think that would give you a competitive advantage in this increasingly international world.
Yeah, and I would just again reference our alumni network. They are an engaged group who seek each other out. And when you come here, you instantly become a part of that network. Next week, the International Trademark Association is hosting their annual conference in Boston, and we are inviting back, we have over 100 alumni joining us back on campus before the conference begins to meet one another, to network. So we provide these opportunities, but I think our alumni also look for one another in the global economy and seek each other out. So I think that's another thing just worth noting. Any other questions?
Well, there is one more question, and the question is asked about the internship, but I think what she means is that is there any opportunity for externships and internships while a person is doing their LLM program with University of New Hampshire, especially for the LLM programs? Do you have any tie-ups with some IP firms or something like that to get some experiential learning?
Yes. So there are opportunities available, and we will work with students on an individual basis to connect them where it's appropriate. So absolutely, we also have here a couple of different clinic opportunities that LLM students are eligible to participate in. We have our, I'm blanking on it now, technology or International Technology
ITTI.
Transfer Institute.
Yeah.
And then the other one is our...
We have an IP clinic.
Yes.
They mostly do trademark work for a variety of organizations.
And so our LLM students are eligible to participate in those, and in fact, they often get priority because they're only here for the 1 year. So we try to make sure that if that is something they want to do, that opportunity is available to them during their time here.
Yeah, one of the things the school has always pioneered is this idea of, we call them legal residencies, much like the doctors, to get out in the field, studying with a practitioner, learning the real world aspects of what you learn in the classroom and applying it outside. So this has always been a major part of our legal education here. When we have an office that's designed to, does these legal residencies, when we have staff that help people do that.
Yeah, and I would just encourage anyone who is looking for that type of opportunity to reach out to us, and we can talk a little bit more about what it is specifically you're looking to do and connect you with the right people to make sure that we'll be able to meet that need for you.
I hope that answers your question, and there is one question from Anisha who has asked that having learned the IP law from one country, what is the process to becoming an IP lawyer in another country? Or maybe what she specifically means could be if somebody is qualified as an intellectual property lawyer in another jurisdiction, is there any process where they can become an intellectual property in the US? I think you touched upon that already in your presentation, but if you'd want to elaborate on that, because I think you already covered it in your presentation.
One thing for sure, in the United States, if you want to be a patent attorney, we have a separate bar for that, and it's called the patent bar, and the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office administers that. They administer it throughout the year. A number of our students take it while they are here. It is a separate exam. A student can do that. With regard to reciprocity, things like trademarks, oftentimes that's not you don't have to be separately barred. So if you know the United States law, we had this problem with clients in my firm. I want to roll out a new trademark. I've got to think the whole world now because somebody's going to get internet domain names. I have to decide what countries I'm going to go to, and having an understanding of all the various areas. Not that you are going to go practice there. In fact, we always would find somebody, usually from Franklin Pierce training, the Franklin Pierce Intellectual Property Center training, that would represent us in that country rather than trying to represent yourself. But you were able to think internationally. You know that some countries, the trademark protection might not be as strong, or you might have to go in very quickly because you don't have to use. And so that type of understanding, I think, is useful. And not that you're going to suddenly become barred in every country, but that you're going to be consulting companies that are going to be in multiple countries.
Great. Well, thank you. We appreciate you all joining us today and look forward to hearing from you if you have additional questions. The email is admissions@law.unh.edu, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining, and thank you for joining. And if you'd like to know more about it, please do reach out to Sarah Dorner on the email listed below. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, professors, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vishnu.
Take care.